Have you heard this statistic that 80% of Americans want to write a book? So how come so many don't write a book? The answer is one simple word: fear. And today we're going to talk about the 4 most common fears I hear that prevent people from writing a book and what you can do about them. Hi, Jodi Brandon here of Jodi Brandon Editorial. I am a book editor and book writing coach for solopreneurs, creative entrepreneurs, and bloggers who want to write a book or ebook to scale their business. And today we are tackling fear, specifically the 4 most common fears that I hear from people when they come to me and say, I want to write a book, or I'm having trouble writing my book because. It's usually one of these 4 reasons. Number 1, fear of failure. That would make sense, of course, right? Nobody likes to fail. We don't like to put so much effort into something only to have it not reap any rewards. That's a common one. And of course, that's the number 1 thing that I hear. Number 2, perfectionism. Recovering perfectionist, raising her hand right here. That has always been the one that's gotten me. Number 3, imposter syndrome. When your brain starts to tell you or ask you, who do you think you are? You're not an expert. What are you doing writing a book? Who do you think is going to buy this book? Who do you think is going to read this book? Why do you think you're qualified to write a book? All of those nagging little questions that start creeping into your brain, imposter syndrome. And finally, number 4, analysis paralysis, which is basically, in simple terms, overthinking. When you overthink to the point of paralyzing yourself. You can't move forward. You can't type a word. You can't decide what chapter is going to come after this chapter. You can't move forward with any sort of decision making because you're so paralyzed by the fear. So those are the 4 that I hear the most often from people. There are, of course, countless others. Fear of success, even, I hear sometimes from people. Or I don't maybe hear it in those words, but we figure out that's what they're actually afraid of, actually succeeding at this thing. So there are countless others, but those are the 4 that I hear the most often in the book publishing community. So I have a 4-step process for how you can combat these fears and get started so you can be one of those 20% of Americans who do write a book, right? So number 1, identify which fear or fears are stopping you. Figure out what it is that's actually stopping you from moving forward. Now, it could be one of those that I mentioned. It could be a combination of them. It could be none of them and something totally different. But you have to figure out which it is that's holding you back in order to move forward. So I know that mine, for example, is perfectionism still. Last year when I was writing my book about writing a book and publishing a book, as a book editor, my biggest fear, of course, is that there are typos in the book. Well, guess what? There are typos in every single book. Why? Because human eyes are not perfect, right? So, the best case scenario, all of the studies say, throughout the publishing and editing community, a 95 to 96% success rate is great for an editor. I'm above that, but I still cringe every time I miss a typo or, a misspelled word or anything really that gets into my book or one of my clients' books. It just makes me cringe. And I know, even before the books are published, that there are going to be typos in them, no matter how many times a book is reviewed, no matter how many sets of eyes look over those words and how many times things are going to creep in because human error, right? But that's mine. So step number 1, identify your fear or fears. Step number 2, identify the cause or the source of that fear. Mine, very simply, it's not as easy for everyone. Sometimes you have to do some work, dig back, dig deep to figure out where this comes from for you. Mine comes from elementary school. I went to Catholic school and we had a language arts teacher. She was a nun who was just, not such a nice lady. And I knew at a very young age what I wanted to do with my life. I couldn't articulate I want to be a book editor, but I could articulate that I wanted to work with books and with words. And she used to tell me all the time that there was no way I was going to be able to do that if I didn't get 100s on my English tests, even though I was getting like 97%, 98% on my papers and my essays and my tests. She was convinced that I was not good enough, and then I became convinced that I wasn't good enough, and then I started to make myself a little bit crazy trying to be a perfectionist, which, as you might imagine, did not serve me well. So I'm a recovering perfectionist. It's still something that I work on, but I very clearly have completed step number 2 of identifying the root cause of my main fear that held me back. Step number 3, figure out how you're going to get past this fear, get over this fear. And the way you do that is to visualize yourself past the fear. So I would, visualize myself publishing my book, typos or not. I would visualize, myself returning edited manuscripts to clients and having them, call me and say, oh my gosh, you did such a great job. I can't believe how many errors you found and suggestions you made to improve my manuscript and make this book even better, and all of those sorts of things. So whatever your fear is, that will determine what success will look like. If you're suffering from analysis paralysis, maybe success for you looks like just getting it done. Maybe your fear of failure looks like just getting it done, or just starting, or just putting it out there once it's finished. So really what that looks like, what that success looks like, is driven by the actual fear itself. And that's going to, again, be different for everyone. But my 4th step is to create a mantra. And this, again, will be different for everyone, depending on what you think is going to work to help you create that visualization of success and actually get there. And so for me, I used to have a Post-it on my desk that said, pencils have erasers for a reason, just to sort of help me remember every single day, a visual reminder that, nobody's perfect, human error, all of those things. And so I finally got rid of that Post-it last year now I keep this, I actually was holding it to show you, a little pencil, and it says, make more mistakes, that my friend Amy Johnston of Johnston Style gave to me. And she said, I know you have that post on your desk about pencils and erasers and, about your perfectionism and all that. And so she gave me a pack of these pencils, and I actually almost cried from laughter, and it was just the sweetest thing. So figure out what a mantra could be for you, and whether that ends up being a Post-it on your desk, an object that serves as a visual reminder, a quote, hanging up in a frame on your wall in your office, whatever it may be, that will help remind you that when you start feeling that fear coming in, when you start to recognize, it's coming, then you can take a look at that mantra, whether it's on a piece of paper, a physical object, whatever, and get yourself, force yourself to power through, get back to visualizing that success, and keep moving forward. So you can do it. You can write a book. You can get a book out there. I know that it's scary. I know that from firsthand experience, and I know that from working with people like you for the last 20 years. But don't let fear stop you, is always my advice to author entrepreneurs. So let me know in the comments if you have any questions. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you would, and until next time, I'll talk to you then.